Well, Lawrence, that's it. Williams have unveiled their challenger, and it has got a lot of people talking. What did you make of the FW43B?
I really liked the car and the livery when we got to see it. It was just disappointed that we didn't get the chance to see it in the way they intended through this really cool app, this augmented reality app that they'd created specifically for the launch, so the fans could play around with it and kind of position the car around the house, around their driveway.
Yeah, it's a real shame. A lot of effort went into creating that launch. Ultimately, the system got hacked. Who would do that? And try and spoil that is a real shame, I think, for all of the work that had gone on. But the car itself does look good. There's a lot of promising chat coming out of Williams, and there really needs to be, because they've been through a very, very difficult time. Let's start by looking back at what was a really difficult 2020. Well, Lawrence, I guess things can't get any worse. Is that the positive that we take out of 2020?
Yes, it was a painful year for Williams on the scoreboard side of things. They obviously didn't score a point, but I think there were positives that they were just closer generally to the pack last year. I know that that won't really generally help them when they're maybe looking for sponsors and they're saying they're back of the pack, but there were some really positive signs out of 2020. George really came on step by step. I thought Nicholas came on as well. The new owners coming in, that they said they had investment and they injected that investment. So I think that's a real positive thing for the team. And as you sort of hinted, I think things are generally looking brighter for that very famous team set up by Sir Frank Williams.
A big change, of course. Huge change in 2020 was the departure of the Williams family from the Williams F1 team. You've alluded to it there with the new investors, I should say. Doralton Capital coming on board with the team. A wholesale change in the way in which this team operates, the way in which it will be run.
Yeah, it was a really sad day when, Sir Frank and Claire and the Williams family decided to leave, but they did it with the idea that they could save the team. To secure its future. Jobs have been always so important for them, and to keep that 400 strong workforce in employment was important to them, but also to put the team in a position whereby, still under the Williams brand, hopefully in the medium to long term, they can get back up to the front where they were used to competing in the 80s and the 90s.
This is it, isn't it? We look at McLaren and the turnaround that they had, once the target team of the 1980s and 1990s, who struggled so much through this hybrid era. The same, of course, is true for Williams. Once the target team, admittedly, when budgets were very, very different and the sport was very, very different. But hopefully these green shoots of recovery that's led to McLaren's renaissance to finishing third in the championship last year might also be true at Williams, and those changes coming in already for 2021. Let's take a look then at how different the team will be this season. So big changes, Lawrence, for the team. As we've said, new owners in Doralton Capital, but also a new CEO in the form of Jost Capito, massively respected, massively experienced. Is he the guy to lead Williams on to, I guess, the successes that we recognize being associated with the Williams name?
I know the new owners will certainly hope that he is the guy. As you said, well respected. If you speak to people within the paddock, not in just Formula One, but in motorsport circles, they'll tell you that Jost is a guy who can turn things around. What he did with the Volkswagen program in the World Rally Championship was incredible. And McLaren wanted him, of course. So he had a short stint there, which didn't quite work out for various reasons, largely his links to Ron Dennis, who left that team. I think he's a great sort of signing for them, because they needed that guy with that experience to come in and shape the future. It's great that they've got investment, but you need someone in the kind of form of Andrea Seidel, who we've seen has done such great work at McLaren. You need that kind of guy in place to be able to make what is fundamentally a good racing team with good facilities and good people. You just need to make them operate in the right way. And, all the signs so far suggest that Jost is the guy.
Yeah, the other interesting thing, I think, for Williams and what the Doralton Capital have already put into effect is one of the things that Claire pushed back against for so long, which was she wanted to maintain Williams's independence, that they wouldn't be, a true customer team. They wouldn't take parts from other places. I always felt that sort of held them back in many respects. When you looked at what AlphaTauri were doing with Red Bull, when you look at how Haas maximized their relationship with Ferrari, when you looked at what Aston Martin had done, or Racing Point as they were, had done with Mercedes, Williams had that opportunity to be Racing Point, and they turned it down. Now, though, they've started to accept more parts, more help from Mercedes. That won't be seen fully until 2022. But the fact that they're open to this could be key to their turnaround.
I think so. I think that approach that Claire took was very noble. I think she wanted to stick to the routes that her father had put down. But because the rules allowed the likes of Haas and AlphaTauri to do that, it wasn't really a competitive way of going racing. So I think you're right. Taking the rear end for Mercedes, including the gearbox, taking all the bits that you don't have to spend your own time producing, that in terms of performance don't make so much of a difference, makes so much sense. Like you said, has to prove that's the thing to do in Formula One these days if you want to be competitive. I think that's a very shrewd move from Dalton to do that, but also still try and keep some of the roots and the heritage of Williams in place, because I think that's the main selling point for the team. 2022 will be the start of that, and it's the start of the journey. So I wouldn't suggest that we're going to see a massive change straight away. But I think the very fact that, like you said, Will, they've made that key decision to allow their independence to be open a little bit more, I think will make all the difference in the years to come.
Absolutely. Let's look then to the launch, to the car that we saw, the FW43B. The launch wasn't what Williams wanted it to be, and the really fun, kind of fan-friendly launch they wanted it to be. But the car itself, although based on what was a tricky customer last year, shows some real differences and some real promise.
Yeah, I think it could be a really exciting season for Williams, because they haven't done the Haas approach, which is develop a car and then they're going to leave it undeveloped for the year. They've worked quite hard on the car, and they're going to continue developing it with a team dedicated to that development program. There are lots of little tweaks under the skin, said Simon Roberts at the launch. Interestingly, he said that they managed to take a ton of weight out of the car to the point where they can now use it as ballast to redistribute it. And I think when you've got that kind of that access or that option during a race weekend, massive gains can be made there. So I think for them, it's not going to pull them up to the top of the midfield, but I think it is going to pull them back into the pack. And they, realistically, they should be competing against the Hasses and the Alphas quite competitively. And
here's the thing: we look back just 2 seasons, and Williams didn't get a car to the first week of pre-season testing. This year, there were just 3 days of pre-season testing, and Williams are already talking about they've got their first upgrade package ready to be trialed and run in that first test, so they know which direction they want to take for the opening race. It's a different team. It's a massive turnaround. George actually joked that he didn't have a car, for his debut season at testing, and now he's got 3 days, which is actually way more than he had then. So he's not even that worried about the lack of testing. But you're right, on the upgrade front, I think Williams, when you've not got budget and you've not got an operation process going that smoothly, it's very difficult to make steps forward. And last year, while they didn't score points, they were bringing upgrades, little ones, to every race weekend. And that behind the scenes movement is hugely important, because they can just up that this year and hopefully then bring slightly bigger parts that do have slightly bigger gains for them this year. It's another blue car. Let's talk about livery quickly. It's a bit Marmite as well. Some people loving it, some people hating it. What do you think? I really love it. I think it's great. I love the fact that there's a little bit of a return to the yellow, because that, for me, when Williams was successful in the 80s and 90s, I think that colour just brings back great memories for that really successful time. And I think they need to change it up. They've kept true to the roots of those blues off Williams, but I think that they've got to show that this is a new chapter for the team. And I really like it. What about you? Yeah, I love it. As I've already said, it reminds me of the Ligier art car from 1993. But, they've got their new team kit sponsorship with Umbro. Reminds me of a mid-90s England football shirt. So, I love it. Probably like a training top or one of David Seaman's goalkeeper shirts. But I love it, a little bit funky, a little bit different. Very cool. You won't be able to miss it. That is absolutely for certain. Let's look then at what the team has got going for it, and what would be a good or bad season for the team going into 2021. Right, Lawrence, strengths and weaknesses for this Williams team. I think the strengths are that they are starting to put the foundation blocks in place for a very successful medium to long-term future.
and their new owners are allowing them the time to do that. They're not expecting results overnight. They're putting the investment in the right places and, curing all the problems that they've got back at base, trying to get the people in the right position, giving Jost some time to set out his plan, assess what he's got to work with. His first day physically in the office was only on launch day. So it's going to take some time for him to kind of get his feet under the table. But I think from that point of view, it's a massive strength because they've got the investment now. They've got new owners who are putting faith in the team that they've got. They've got new people. The motivation is back. They're bringing Jenson Button in, of course, as a special advisor to really motivate.
I forgot about that.
And I think, talking to the drivers, and George and Nicholas think that's a great idea because I think it's just useful to have that experience on hand. They're not saying they need it, but I think it's just a useful thing to have his sort of experience around, and he'll motivate not just the drivers, but the staff as a whole. I think it's a statement of intent from Williams that they're not afraid to do what it takes to get back to the front.
Talking about the drivers, of course, great strength there with the continuing of that driver lineup from one year to the next. Latifi, I think, did a really good job in 2020. It wasn't all that much said about him, but when you look at George and the plaudits being thrown on George, and when he jumped up to that Mercedes, how easily he led the race and how much he should have won that race. Latifi, more often than not, in the Grand Prix last season, I would say, if not equaled, sometimes actually outperformed George in race trim.
He just left himself too much to do on a Sunday afternoon because his qualifying performance, as he admits, was just a little bit too weak. But you're right, on a Sunday afternoon, if he could get himself in a good position, and there were times when in tricky races, he found himself quite high up the order. If things had just gone his way, he might have been indeed the first person or the more likely to score a point.
He did look the more likely, didn't he? I think didn't he have a run about 3 or 4 11th places last season? And he was looking really, actually, the most likely of the two to score a point.
And I think that's probably why the team are so supportive of him and they speak so highly about him because, okay, like you just said, on paper, his results haven't quite been there, but I think they won't be backing a driver and they won't be putting a driver in that car, even if he does bring some sort of financial support, if he's not going to prove useful to that team.
Weaknesses, of course, you can't look past the fact that the car itself is quite bare. There aren't the sponsors there. Yes, you have these investors, but ultimately you're only going to get big sponsors if the results, I guess, start to come.
And that is, again, going to take some time, which might suggest it might be some time until we see those empty spaces filled up, I guess. But then you could also look at it in another way, that perhaps the new owners aren't prepared to just give space away for not much money because they're setting a higher level now and they want to make this a premium brand. And so perhaps maybe in the short term, eventually they will be able to encourage some bigger brands, because Williams is a great brand, that they'll be able to encourage some other sponsors to join as this kind of form keeps improving.
Love it. Absolutely. Keep that rate card high. Right. Let's look then to what would be a good or bad season for the team in 2021. Well, I guess just as with Mercedes, we said anything less than the win is a bad season. Is anything other than last place a good season for Williams?
I think so. I think that, to be fair, even if they finish last, but say they score points, or they've shown that they are not only just competing with the Alfa Romeos and the Hasses, but at points competing with the midfield, I think that's a strong point as well. I think for morale, they'll want to not finish 10th. I think that will, for just internally, that will make a massive difference. But I think, again, they're not trying to shoot for the stars this year in terms of pure results. They just want to keep showing that they're making progress and operationally working well as a team, so that hopefully when they get a good car next year, they're able to really kick on and make the most of that package from the early doors.
I can't wait to see how this year works out for them. They've got a great driver lineup, very exciting driver lineup, with Jost Capito at the head of that team, with Simon Roberts running the operation from a track perspective. There is so much to be excited about. That Mercedes engine in the back, all the promise for us into 22. There's a good vibe down there that this could be the start of something really good.
Definitely. And it's easy to forget that Simon Roberts only started at that team halfway through last year, first as managing director and then quickly promoted to acting team principal. And he's already kind of got that team operating in a very smooth and efficient way. He settled into that role very well. I think that, if they get that racing team working well, so that when the opportunities arise, I think it could be a really good thing. And you're right, you just listed off a load of things that I think lots of teams up and down the grid would want to have in place. And we just have to give them the time now to hopefully make the most of it.
Absolutely. Just one car launch left, Lawrence, and it's a biggie. It's Ferrari. It'll be in Bahrain, and we'll be out there for it.
Yes, we will. So maybe not even this fall. Maybe we'll be allowed to be a little bit closer, Will, by that time.
Well, I mean, probably closer than we are right now, because 2 meters is closer than however many miles it is, my friend. Looking forward to it. I'll see you on the flight tomorrow.
Yes, you will. Looking forward
Brilliant
to it.
stuff. And we will see you folks in Bahrain in a few days' time. For now, though, from Lawrence and from me, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you at the next one.